and welcome to volume 51 of Ask a Brit. Apologies, it's been a while, about 3 weeks now, I think, since the last Ask a Brit. A lot's been going on. I've obviously been preparing for this trip to San Francisco, which was wonderful. We've just done it, and as I speak, I've got a nasal blockage. I don't know what's happening there. There we go, I'm good. And I went to Idaho as well, so I was busy preparing for that, and also in the midst of it, our cat got sick, and unfortunately, the day that we went out to San Francisco, we had to euthanize him, and so it's just been a really difficult time and all of that. So apologies, but I am back and everything's good. We've got videos in the pipeline, not literally. They would get lost with all the oil that is in there, and then it's going to be good. This week's topic, in case you've forgotten, since it was so long ago, is British place names, and we got a lot of good questions coming from you fine people over the last few weeks. And just a reminder, if you're not used to this, so you've never seen this series, this is the series in which I ask you fine people to ask me any question you like, so long as you use this hashtag, and so long as it is in line with the theme laid out in the last video. And as I said, that is British place names. So without further ado, let's get to the questions. That's hot. Never put coffee in the microwave for 3 minutes. First question today comes from Sarah Baker, and Sarah asks, we have some hilarious place names in Britain, but what, in your opinion, are the funniest that you've ever heard? So I grew up in Lincolnshire, which I think is home to Spittle in the Street. I'm also rather partial to the Isle of Dogs, and I think my favourite of all time has to be Twat. There's a genuine place name. It's in the Orkney Islands. Twat, stand next to this sign, as some people hilariously do. I'm sure one day I'll get round to that. Next question comes from Lord Strongpike, which is definitely YouTube name of the week. It might also be a significantly good name for a cider. And Lord Strongpike asks, what's your favourite name that you've seen for a bar in the UK? I think it's probably Ye Old Cock, which roughly translates, by the way, to the Old Cock. So, and I rather like the Winchester, which is obviously a pub name in the film Shaun of the Dead, but is in fact a pub that I frequented. Not that particular one. That's fictional, I assume. Maybe it isn't. I hope that the invasion of zombies is fictional. Though when you're as drunk as I've been on occasion at some of these pubs, it's hard to tell the zombies from the regular drunkards. Okay, next question comes from Jay Joy, and Jay Joy asks, the smaller islands of the British Isles have such intriguing names like the Isle of Skye, the Isle of Wight, the Scilly Islands, Isle of Man, Shetland, Jersey, Guernsey, etc. What small British island name is your favourite? I think I'd have to say it is the Orkney Islands, probably because I'm reminded of Twat. But also because it just sounds good. It sounds like it is partially from The Lord of the Rings with the orcs and the knees. Do orcs have knees? They're a bit of a mishmash of stuff. Probably not. But anyway, the Orkney Islands I've always been partial to. The Shetland Islands too. There's something about the islands to the north of Scotland that get my nipples in a twist. That is not what I intended to say. It just came out that way. Sorry about that. Next question comes from Woody4077. What's the deal with all the places containing the word sex? So Middlesex and Sussex and all of that. So sex in this sense actually goes back to the Anglo-Saxons, who stuck it onto the end of words to denote that this place was of the Saxons. In other words, it belonged to them. It is the land of the Saxons. So when you're talking about Sussex, you're talking about the land that is of the South Saxons. And when you're talking about Middlesex, you're talking about the land or the people of the Middle Saxons. And when you're talking about Essex, you're talking about the land or the people of the East Saxons. There is no North. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? No sex. Which only proves, I think, that the Anglo-Saxons were a randy bunch of people. But that's where it comes from, and that's why we have that. Okay, next question. This comes from Christine Dorman, and Christine asks about Weston-super-Mare. And Weston-super-Mare, as Christine points out, is the birthplace of John Cleese, whom I adore. When I hear the name, I imagine its origin being explained by a legend about a horse who saved the townspeople from some Dark Ages catastrophe. I'm sure that's not it, but any idea about the history of the name? Well, I do, and in fact, it's not quite as exciting as that, I'm afraid to say, Christine, because its name has two histories to it. Firstly, Weston is Anglo-Saxon for Western settlement, particularly the ton part. It means settlement, and West obviously means west. And Supermare is actually just Latin for above sea. It's nothing, sadly, to do with horses, though I suppose if you combine the meaning, you might end up with seahorses. So there is some small consolation there. Next question, and a couple of people ask questions along this line. Reasonably Sane and Jamie from Tennessee want to know about the pronunciations of words like Greenwich and Norwich and Leicester. Where did all these come from? To tackle Greenwich and Norwich first, it's not fully known exactly why they are pronounced the way they are. I mean, to look at them, you'd think that it should be Greenwich and Norwich. Now, over this idea where we drop the W in words of this ilk, there's no consistency across the UK with this. I mean, you've got place names like Ipswich, which we do pronounce Ipswich, not Ipswich. There's even a place called Wick, which we pronounce Wick, not Ick, and just drop the W as opposed to Warwick, you know. So firstly, there is no consistency. What I will say in the case of Greenwich, back in the early days, back in Old English, I think it was spelled like this. So there is some historical precedent for it actually being spelled the way we almost pronounce it to this day. No such claim in that sense for Norwich, I don't believe. But of course, something that Greenwich and Norwich have in common is that they are both replicated, name-wise, on the east coast of the United States. And I think that most people in the US, I believe, would pronounce Greenwich, Connecticut as Greenwich, Connecticut. So the pronunciation did stick. In the case of Leicester, Jamie, it's an interesting one, that because the Cester part, there's the many variants of that at the end of words, place names in the United Kingdom. So Manchester, Lancaster, Leicester, that sort of ending, there's different variants of it as well. And I believe there's an additional variant in Wales too. So history, didn't arrive at a consensus as to how that suffix should be spelled, never mind pronounced. So Leicester's an interesting one. Leicester's gone through a number of various different spellings. You see it here in the Doomsday Book, spelled like that. I think it is just another example of spelling and pronunciation not staying consistent with each other, because we just didn't have a sort of standardized way of spelling things until Dr. Johnson and his dictionary. And obviously this is a place name, so it's less likely to feature in a dictionary. But often people weren't seeing the words that they were saying. So perhaps there's something to that as to why that C in Leicester doesn't really get pronounced. Here's a good question from Lisa Meath, who asks, why is Mr. Darcy's home county, Derbyshire, pronounced Derbyshire as opposed to Derbyshire, or Derbyshire, if you want to take it even further? It's a good question, and I would throw right back at you. Why do we pronounce the word sergeant thusly? But the history of the two words is completely dissimilar. In the case of Derby, there is in fact a precedent going back to the 1600s of the word Derby being spelt with an A on maps, as I said, going back to the 1600s. A number of people, including Stephen Nolte, have dared me to pronounce this particularly long Welsh place name. I've been lucky enough to see this place name in the flesh on my visit to that particular village many, many years ago when I was about 13. And I believe it's pronounced something along the lines of Llanfair Pushgwingwish, Llanfair Pushgwingish, Llanfair Pushgwingish Gogera, Chwendor, Llanfair Pushgwingish Gogera, Llanfair, what on earth? Llanfair Pushgwingish Gogera, Chwenro Bush, Llan Tasilio Gogogoch. And after all that, Mark Oldgeezer asks, is this really a word that all Welsh people can pronounce, or is it just as rare to hear a Welsh person say it as it is an English person? I don't know, Mark. I assume Welsh people can pronounce it, but my goodness, you need a lot of phlegm. Next question comes from Eric. How in the hell do you pronounce Marylebone? Marylebone, although some people might say Marylebone. Marylebone. But yes, I can see why it is difficult. It has a lot of consonants in there, but Marylebone is indeed how I think I would say it. Similarly, J. Joy asks, how do you say Worcestershire? Just like that. No Worcestershire. I don't know that a lot of anyone would say Worcestershire. I think it's one of those old jokes that Americans routinely pronounce it that way. They might if they're trying to be humorous, but in fact, don't forget, there is a Worcester in Massachusetts, and I think the locals there would indeed pronounce it either Worcester or Worcester. And so, trying to be faithful again to the British pronunciation. That's it for this episode of Ask a Brit. Keep your questions coming for volume 52, when we will be discussing discussing British cinema. I don't know why I went high-pitched there, but I did, so just live with it. Until next time, cheerio, have a great week, enjoy the summer weather, and don't forget to cream yourself. Put cream on yourself. That went wrong. Thank you for watching this episode of Ask a Brit. Don't forget to hit my stupid little face to subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and if you'd like to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond.